Production funding for Ruckus has been provided by Fred and Lou Hartwig and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon, and the Ruckettes join me shortly. Our topics this week: MU now stands for massive unrest, Brown back and forth in Kansas, and fulfilling a desire named Streetcar downtown, plus roast and toast. But we start with our interview segment and welcome the recently named head of the Kansas City Film Office, Stephanie Scuppam. After years of neglect, the office has been finally reactivated as part of Visit KC. Our guest works to help bring visual productions to Kansas City and then works to assist the producers and crew once they arrive. To tell us more about her work and herself is Steph Scuppam. Welcome to Ruckus. Thanks for joining us.
Mike, thank you so much for having me.
Now, I was going to read a segment of your resume as part of the introduction, but I realized if I did, there would be no interview. I'd spend the whole time reading your background and resume. So why don't you take just a moment and give us an overview of the work you've done previously?
Absolutely. An overview, a very quick overview is that I have experience working at advertising agencies, working in television, some audio experience. I was a talent agent for some 4 years here in Kansas City. A director and producer of national, regional, and local commercials, a little bit of editing as well, and some project management. But I seemed to always gravitate toward the customer service side, account management, and producing. So a lot of organization, a lot of communication, and a lot of service.
Well, I would assume the film office gives you a very good chance to use the various facets of your background.
It does.
What was the impetus for reopening the office? It was closed for what, about a decade?
About a decade. It was closed for a decade, and in that time there was an ad hoc all-volunteer film commission who really took care of the productions coming in. All of those people, though, did have full-time jobs and or were a part of the production industry working very all the time. So handling that influx of work was difficult. We wanted to raise the bar in Kansas City, and the mayor decided that that was a priority. We have a demand for it. We want to be a city that's competitive in this industry, and so the film office was reopened.
Now, how is it funded? What's the funding stream?
I know that there's a stipend from the city, and otherwise Visit KC handles the bulk of the budget.
Do you work on behalf of Greater Kansas City or just Kansas City, Missouri?
Actually, it is Greater Kansas City. We have we're compiling, actually, there's so many municipalities around here, and we go, and a production doesn't know, especially coming in from out of town, when they're here, they'll be on the Missouri side in 1 second, and they drive across one road and they're in Kansas and in another municipality. So we've worked really hard to compile all of the proper contacts in each different municipality to make production easy.
Steph, when you talk to producers from out of town, what do you tell them about the benefits of Kansas City? What are the highlights?
Well, one of the great benefits of Kansas City for producers that work mainly on either coast, Los Angeles or New York, is how accessible everything is here. It takes just a few minutes to get from one side of the city to the other, or if you're going from South Kansas City in the suburb areas to the city, it's no more than 45 minutes. They can't believe it. And that's a cost savings to them because they can get more done in a day.
Yeah,
so,
and they provide work for people in Kansas City too, do they not?
Absolutely.
Local talent, and some people, when the movies are filmed here,
yes.
I know have been extras in the movies.
Absolutely. So not only do they cast here, sometimes for key roles and oftentimes for extras roles or some other not key roles, but they do hire crew here, and we have professional crew that actually have worked all over the country, if not the world. So we have a crew base here that can handle any production. I guess the challenge is that because we don't have as many larger productions coming in, perhaps that we've got a little bit of leakage going on where they've moved to other cities that have more activity, and maybe maybe the other challenge is just that that doesn't go as deep. We need more people with those kinds of experiences. But now with the film office, and I'm an advocate for people to hire when they come in. You know, I always ask them, who are you hiring? You might not think about this now, but you're going to need some grips. You're going to need some PAs. You know, we've got some great gaffers, and we've got all of these equipment companies, so we've got you covered.
Well, since you've been the film czarina, have you been pretty busy with productions in Kansas City?
You know what? To date, the film office has assisted 195 different productions. So that right there in and of itself shows why this office is needed. We're representing Kansas City every time a visitor comes in to work. These are visitors, and we want them to know that they're very welcome here and that we want their business.
Well, you sound optimistic about the film office's future, and I hope your optimism is well-founded because I think it's an important aspect of life in Kansas City. Steph, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, that is Stephanie Scuffham, Commissioner of the Kansas City Film Office. Now, let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Cynthia Wheeler is a marketing strategist. Steve Rose is a Johnson County civic leader and a columnist with the Kansas City Star. Mary O'Halloran is talking to Woody Cozad and is a media and communications consultant, and Woody's talking with Mary. He's president of the Cozad Company, a government relations
I'm just
firm.
trying to get more time.
Don't worry, I'm sure you'll take the time. It's like a throwback to the 60s, claims of racism on campus, threats of student unrest, one student on a hunger strike, black members of the football team refusing to practice or play, all calling for University of Missouri System President Tim Wolf to resign. Students, backed by some faculty, got their way, and Wolf left the Tigers on Monday morning. All this and more playing out on the campus in Columbia, where black students and others claim that increasing levels of racial slurs and symbols on campus have not been dealt with properly. Wolf's resignation took place at a special meeting of the University Board of Curators. As a former member of that board, Woody, what's your assessment of the way this whole thing has been handled?
Everybody gets an F. It couldn't have been botched much worse. The Board of Curators has conspired at destroying the reputations and careers of two men without, as nearly as I can see, pausing a single nanosecond to discover whether there was any truth behind the accusations that certain events had happened.
That's Wolf and the Chancellor?
Whoa.
Wolf and the Chancellor. And so
You're saying the events didn't happen?
let me ask you a question. Have you seen a picture of this fecal swastika? Because the supporters have tweeted one. And you know what it turns out to be? A picture that's been going around the internet for a year.
I was not in that dorm room, okay? I am not a student who wakes up to that, but I am a young enough and old enough to know what the 60s was like. And for somebody to ride by me and call me a name, absolutely. You wouldn't know that because you were not there. So I'm not going to say that did not happen.
I wish I could
Now,
remember what the
mind-
60s were like.
If you don't mind
I know you
finishing
can.
the point I
Go
was
ahead.
making, it is this. We don't know if that fecal swastika actually happened. We don't have any evidence of it, and when asked for evidence, they produce a picture that's fraudulent. The president of the student body, an African American, says that a truck went by him and a bunch of people hurled racial epithets at him, or somebody hurled racial epithets at him. The president then said a few days later, the Ku Klux Klan is active on the campus and I am personally working with the National Guard. That was a falsehood. He was compelled to withdraw.
We can't.
So we know he will lie. So do we believe the
we
first
know
statement?
he will lie. Why?
Because he lied.
How do we know he lied about that first statement? We don't know.
We don't know.
There.
No, we don't
That
know
is
about the
correct.
first statement. We know that he lied about the second one. So why are we to believe the first one? All I'm saying is the board, I'm not saying these things didn't happen. I'm saying the board didn't even try to find out whether they happened.
That's correct, and I agree with you on the F.
And so they get an F because it matters before you wreck somebody's life that you find out the truth, and nobody
But their
tried
failure
to do
to
it.
find out the truth, their failure to call that student in and sit down and talk to him, the president, and say, what's going on? Their failure to act,
Absolutely.
they belong gone.
You and I are in complete agreement about
What could the
that.
president have done?
Well,
If he
hey.
called them in, what could he have done?
Let me tell you something.
Cross-examine them.
He could have cross-examined them. He could have talked
then
to them
what?
about their experience. And let's be honest, The issue that bubbled to the surface that nobody wants to talk about is racism. It exists.
That's what everybody's talking about.
No, they're not. When I listen to talk shows and I hear, well, you know, it is a pretty open university. He is a black student that was voted president. Oh, and on top of that, it's gay. It's a university. Oh, they're rioting.
Well, the
they're
whole thing
rioting.
is premised on racial unrest. Before we get to Mary,
his message is almost as if it was
Cynthia,
subtle
hang on
enough
a
to
second.
say.
Before we get to Mary, let's take a look at a short clip from President Wolf as he gave his comments following his resignation.
We didn't respond or react. We got frustrated with each other, and we forced individuals like Jonathan Butler to take immediate action or unusual steps to effect change.
Jonathan Butler was the guy who went on the hunger strike, I think. Yes. Mary, what do you think about all this? What's your reaction? You support the students there?
Yes, I do support the students because it's these kinds of things that get out of control are never about the things you see on the surface. They are about the long history and tradition, and Woody, I'm sure you would agree, having been so affiliated for so long with the university, of racism of every sort in Central Missouri since the founding of the state and continuing in various ways. And this generation of students is having its say. Now, good. I'm all for students having their say and their voices heard. However, I have never seen a president and a chancellor, I have to say, and I did represent a state university in Iowa during times when there was a lot of protesting of all sorts, who were so devoid of the techniques of crisis management, who didn't seem to know how to deal with either the prevention of crisis in relationships, it's a very complicated place, the university, or to deal with it once it starts to bubble up and things get dangerous. Or why didn't he talk to me?
Steve, I don't want you to feel like John Kasich, so I'll make sure you get a question. Will students now be running Missouri University?
No, but I think what's happening is that they are setting up structure that they should have had in the first place. They're setting up an Office of Diversity, which, you know, KU has had, University of Kansas has had that since 2011. And I'll be honest with you, when it first started, I thought, you know, that sounds like something that the legislature would probably say, let's cut that out. But they've had it in structure, they've got the staff, and if these kinds of incidents had happened at KU, instead of going to the president, they would have gone to this office and they would have known how to deal with it. I'm an alum of Missouri, and I'm embarrassed by what happened. But I think that the structure that they're going to be setting up now should prevent something like this from happening again.
And you know what, Steve? UMKC has had a structure like this since 2006 and has had very little trouble since that time. Not trouble, but I mean the kinds of student activities and political efforts that get out of control.
Okay, we're out of time, but
good for them.
Quick
good for
parting
KU.
shot. Woody, do you want to get in an additional comment?
History, however bad it is, does not relieve you of the obligation of proving that your accusations are true before you fire somebody over them.
Interesting enough, Wolf's mother and father both worked for University of Missouri at Columbia. I think his mother still is working there as a law professor. One might think that someday Kansas Governor Sam Brownback will catch a break. The state's tax revenues will match the forecast. Some school superintendent will praise the change to block grants for education funding. State Supreme Court justice might offer some hint that it's probably impossible to know just how much providing a suitable education costs. But no such luck for Mr. Brownback. During the last week, state revenue estimates are again being lowered, budget adjustments are being ordered, and judging from a recent hearing, it looks as if the state's high court will once again rule that school districts are not getting enough money. So in light of these developments, Steve, what are we likely to see happen in Kansas over the next several months? Well,
you cannot perfume the pig.
I'm going to write that down.
The state's in big trouble. They're short $159 million this year and $194 million the following year. It's on top of shortfalls in the years past. They're taking more money from the Kansas Department of Transportation, which over several years has had over $1 billion taken out of it. I don't know if there's enough money left to even build a road. And they've drained the reserves down now in order to meet the crisis next to zero, just a $5 million reserve, which is totally inadequate. There's going to be, on top of that is the block grant question that you're referring to. And without dragging everybody into the details of that, the short version is that they did away with this formula that they had been using for funding schools since 1992 and developed block grants. The problem with the block grants is that a 3-panel judge group of judges declared it unconstitutional. Now the Supreme Court has it, and if they declare it unconstitutional, there's going to have to be more money put into schools. The legislators we've talked to have said no. They're not going to put any more money in. They don't care what the courts have to say. They're equal branches, and that sets you up for what could be a constitutional crisis.
What happens then, Mary?
Well, what happens?
What has happened before? Legislators have capitulated.
I've never heard, I certainly was never involved in a state that did this, and I have never heard a state legislature refusing
To fund education.
well, not only to fund education. Well, I've heard of that certainly out west.
Well, they are
particular.
funding education,
Well, no,
not
they're
as much
not
as
funding it.
the
No,
school
they're
districts
not,
want.
Mike.
They are funding the money coming from the state to the schools.
Right, Mike, but it is less and less and less. And this is, I know that we disagree sharply on this, but let me just say, this, Steve, is the situation that Brownback has hoped for. He wants a crisis and conflict with the courts. He wants this battle, and he wants to privatize schools, and he wants to cut their budgets, which he's going to do if he doesn't raise more taxes. By the way, the greatest tax increase in the history of the state is on Brownback's back from last year. And to quote Stephanie Clayton, one of my favorite moderate Republicans from Johnson County, Steve, he has driven Kansas consumers over the edge to going shopping in Missouri, has decimated the transportation fund, and he sent a signal nationwide that our state is in chaos.
Woody,
there you go.
let's take a look at the future. Let's say the state Supreme Court says more money for education and presents that as an order to the legislature. Legislature says no, co-equal branch of government, we're not going to do it.
Right.
What is likely to happen under those circumstances? Any guesses?
I really, it's hard to have a guess at the state level. I can tell you what had happened at the federal level, but I mean, if you've got, the general rule is this: the Constitution of the United States and the states set up 3 equal branches. Right. 2 trump 1. So if you're the Supreme Court and you hand down an order, either the executive or the legislature better be prepared to back you up, or Andy Jackson or Abe Lincoln will do what they did and take Supreme Court orders and just throw them in the wastebasket. So you got to. So when you hand down Brown versus Board and they do Little Rock, Eisenhower better send the troops. If you're up against both branches, and you're the judiciary, you may have a real problem.
But there would be public pressure on the legislators, would there not, Cynthia, if the legislature failed to comply with a state Supreme Court order? Wouldn't constituents be
yes,
calling?
I would like to think that, but in light of what I've witnessed in the last few years in Kansas, I don't know. I mean, it's frightening. It's kind of like the Trump effect. Who knows?
I think you were on. I think, Steve, you were on the show.
I'm sorry.
I think you were on the show the week we talked about the Docking Institute study. About Kansans and their views of Brownback and the budget and taxes. And they all wanted higher taxes on businesses and on wealthy Kansans. But when asked about their own taxes, they said they're too high and the state spends too much money. So you have cognitive dissonance, as they say.
It's like many.
All right, no one seems to know. No one seems to. Let me try a third time now. No one seems to know exactly when, but sooner or later, 4 streetcars will be running on tracks between River Market and Union Station. The initial test of the first streetcar is said to have gone well, and Streetcar Authority Executive Director Tom Garand says the results were even better than expected. Streetcar enthusiasts say the system, yet to begin operations, has already brought about $1 billion worth of development to downtown Kansas City. Now, once all 4 streetcars actually are available to ride, how long do you think it will take to find out if the program is indeed a success, Cynthia, and what criteria should we use to judge it?
I think in terms of criteria, it'd be a bright idea to follow other cities who have been successful, like Portland, who I think in 2008 published some findings that they were able to generate development around their tracks and around their trolley system. in the amount of $3.5 million, and even closer in a one-block area. You have to remember how much track we're talking about, too. But that they started to see more development pop up.
Talking about 2 miles of track.
Yeah, we're talking about 2 miles. I think for us, the way to measure the success would be, 1, through how many people are actually participating in those rides, but 2, what kind of development is sparking up in that area, in that 1 block, 2 block, 3 block area? And where does it really need to be? I think I've said this to you before. I'm troubled that it goes from the River Market area to just Crown Center, when, you know, the beauty would be, as we compare it to St. Louis and the success of St. Louis's transit system, which I question because I was just there and nobody was riding it, you know, how do we measure it using our sister cities?
Yeah. Well, Steve, let's say it's not a success. People don't like it. There are problems. What then? You're not going to get rid of it, are you? It's just going to be sitting there? All those 4
Well, I think the
streetcars?
biggest danger isn't the fact that people won't ride it. I think the biggest
Well, it's not
problem
going
is
to cost
gonna be-
anything, so there's
That's
no
the
reason
point.
not to ride it.
I think that's exactly the point I was going to make. Because it's free, you may have people who get on that trolley who just want to ride it to cause a little bit of trouble, or you may have people who want to get on it just to ride it and sleep. And you could, I think you should charge. I honestly think, and I think they will eventually charge $1 or something token, you know, to keep this thing under control. Because just like I said, you can abuse this free system, and I propose that may happen.
Well,
God forbid that a Republican should ever want anybody to have
Anything for free.
No, but Steve, you know, the reason they
No
gave
such
for
thing.
not charging is that it would cost them more to put in the system and have the driver, so to speak. I don't think there's much of a drive. I don't think it takes much driving. Deal with the change or the tokens or whatever it is. That all of that would cost more than just having it be a free ride.
let me go to Woody here for
It's
a second.
so cool, though. It looks so great. I mean,
I haven't seen it yet.
They're
just
running
the
today.
pictures.
They're
They're testing it this
Today.
morning, Thursday morning, and I
Great.
am told that at least as far as folks seem to know, it is functioning okay. It's running on its own power and not being towed
I mean, wouldn't
as
you
it
like
was
to
earlier
own
in
the
the week.
restaurant where it stops, like Rieger's Cafe?
Woody, we hear talk that the streetcars are the impetus for the development downtown, all of this development that's going up. Might it have been tax increment financing and the amenities of Sprint Center and the Power and Light District, not
Sure.
the streetcars?
Sure, but look, the history, you don't need a study from Portland. Almost anywhere you look, when they put in light rail, they get development along it. As a matter of fact, the Hong Kong model is you tax the incremental increase in the value of the property along the rail because you know it's coming. And so when the value of that property goes up by 50% more than it had been previously increasing, they throw part of that into the pot to sustain it. Which is, you know, there's some fairness to that.
Well,
They
and
are
I
the chief
agree.
beneficiaries of it. It is not, in our city, this is certainly not a mass transit system.
No.
And so the principal beneficiaries are the people whose property increases in value, and they ought to be thrown in more.
That's why
I don't-
But the people
No,
who
they're paying
are
sales tax.
the people who are supporting this and are responsible for it going into existence have the goal of making it a mass transportation system, do they not?
I
And
think that is the
expanding
goal, and
streetcars throughout the
expanding the
city?
streetcar. But I do believe that we as a city, we as a country are a little slow. I mean, you go to Europe and we can hop a rail transportation, but what about the other amenities along with that? Sidewalks that make it easy to get from point A to point B. Am I going to walk how many blocks to get to my office? You know, Ubering it could be a chat. You know, somebody might get upset if I mention that. But you know, taxis. I mean, what other forms of transportation to take you from the drop-off point to your next destination?
Okay, we have to wrap it up. It is time now for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes give a high five or a low blow to people and events in the news. And we start this time with Cynthia.
And my low blow goes to our local media. It is unfortunate that in our own backyard, with the number of issues we're facing dealing with, racism, the fairness of treatment of individuals, that the national news organizations delivered more coverage on the incidents at MU than any of our local television stations. And it also speaks to the issue of diversity in our own backyard.
Woody.
Jesus told us when he had a disagreement in our own community to settle it on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, never one. And Bishop Tutu headed something called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You'll notice the precedence given to truth. The University of Missouri has ignored the issue of truth and whether the accusations for which it and its president and chancellor were indicted are true or not. Not having found the truth, they will not get reconciliation. If I remember this board of curators, I'd go home, shut off my phone, shut off my television, not tweet for a while, and think whether I really with honor can continue to serve on this board.
Steve Rose.
There's the largest building at the Johnson County Community College called the Carlson Center. The Campus Ledger, which is the student newspaper, has called for that name to come down because of something that happened in 2006 that was alleged, never proven, about the president of the college at that time, Chuck Carlson. I think that it's a disgrace that they have come forward with this 9 years later, no particular reason whatsoever. And I think it's bad for the college, and I think it's bad for the community.
Mary.
Good toast. Well, I want to toast my state representative in Prairie Village, where I live. Her name is Dr. Barbara Bollier, and the news this morning came out that the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Kansas, Ray Merrick from Johnson County, has removed her from the House Health and Human Services Committee. Dr. Bollier being removed from the Health Committee because, of course, she's not as cooperative with Governor Sam Brownback as she should be. Here's what she had to, in his eyes, here's what she had to say about it. She said, the Speaker, Merrick, the politics of this is very disturbing. It is my 6th year in the legislature, and I have never seen such upheaval in this place.
And finally, quite a battle at Fox News between Bill O'Reilly and George Will over Will's harsh criticism of O'Reilly's book, Killing Reagan. Will says it's inaccurate and damages President Reagan's reputation. O'Reilly claims Will is part of a cabal that wants Ronald Reagan deified.
That memo was written. That meeting took place. All of what we write in Killing Reagan is true. You're a hack. You're in with the cabal of the Reagan loyalists who don't want the truth to be told.
My roast goes to Bill O'Reilly. Calling George Will, a Pulitzer Prize-winning commentator and Oxford and Princeton-trained PhD, a hack, is as absurd as calling Bill O'Reilly subdued. And that's Ruckus for this week. We're back with new topics next Thursday at 7. Now, on behalf of the Ruckettes and the crew, I'm Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching and good night.